It's well known that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated while standing on the balcony outside his hotel room at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. What's less well known is just a few hours earlier, he placed a phone call from that same hotel room to the church office at Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, where he served as co-pastor along with his father. It may have been Thursday, but Sunday was coming. The church secretary needed his sermon title for the upcoming service. That sermon, which Dr. King never had a chance to preach, bore a chilling and unforgettable title: Why America May Go to Hell. It's hard not to think of that title as deeply resonant with a sermon that Dr. King might preach this very morning if he were still with us. This MLK weekend, injustice in our country is increasingly unrestrained. And cruelty from the highest echelons of power is not only defended, but normalized and even celebrated. Since the beginning of Donald Trump's second term, we have witnessed renewed attacks on democratic norms, the politicization of the justice system, the targeting of LGBTQ plus persons, particularly our transgender siblings, and mass deportations carried out with an open disregard for human dignity and due process, with families treated as expendable. And beyond our borders, U.S. policy increasingly treats human lives, national sovereignty, and land itself as mere bargaining chips in the pursuit of power, an open assertion that might makes right. It's all far too much. And yet, precisely here, King's unfinished sermon refuses to let us look away or let us believe that this is simply the way things have to be. This never-preached sermon was also not the first time that King warned that our country might be headed toward a living hell of our own creation. Just weeks earlier, speaking at mass meetings across the South, King had said plainly, quote, "America's on the way to hell, and the judgment of God is on America now." These were not the words of a man who had given up on this country, but one who feared that we were losing our soul, but he believed that we could still choose another way. King was especially clear about how does this unraveling happen. He reminded his listeners of the Japanese-American internment camps of the 1940s, authorized by presidential order, justified by fear, and defended in the name of national security. In King's words, quote, "A nation that put as many Japanese in concentration camps as they did will put Black people in concentration camps." He might say today that a nation that directs masked and heavily armed ICE agents to occupy U.S. cities, act like a secret police, and treat undocumented immigrants in thuggish, unconstitutional ways will not stop there. As we witnessed last week when an ICE agent killed Renee Good, a U.S. citizen, a mother of three, a poet, as she was driving home after dropping off her 6-year-old at school. A tragedy that has sparked nationwide outrage over the use of deadly force that betrays the basic duty to protect human life. Are we still the land of the free and the home of the brave, or are we becoming a police state? Here's the thing. The Fourth Amendment reminds us of a fundamental principle of justice. I think the Fourth Amendment is actually worth quoting in full. We all need to be remembering our Constitution these days. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. The Fourth Amendment was added to the Bill of Rights specifically to prevent the abuses of what were known as general warrants. that the American colonists were experiencing under British rule, these blanket authorizations that allowed officers to enter homes and seize property without individualized probable cause, treating entire communities as suspect rather than naming a specific person or place. In this country, simply being undocumented is not a criminal offense. It is a civil matter under immigration law. And yet people are being treated as if they were criminals, stopped, detained, and disappeared into a system that offers little explanation and even less mercy. The Constitution promises protection to everyone within our borders, not just citizens. But what we are witnessing is not only a failure of law, it is a failure of conscience. The measure of justice is not how we treat the powerful, but how we treat the vulnerable. Let me be clear, I went to seminary, not law school. I am your minister, not your lawyer. But if you look at very useful resources like the Handbook for Constitutional Observers from the Minnesota's Immigration Defense Network, it's a free 22-page document widely available online through your favorite search engine. 3 key rights to remember are: you have a Fourth Amendment right to privacy. ICE and the police cannot enter a home without permission or a warrant signed by a judge about a particular person or place. You have a Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. Use your Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. That also means that you can and often should refuse to sign documents or provide documents without a lawyer present. You have a Sixth Amendment right to seek legal counsel. You can ask, am I free to leave? If they say you can, leave, and leave calmly. This handbook is also a valuable resource if you want to learn more about best practices for observing and documenting law enforcement interactions. I know that many of you have already gotten involved by showing up for things like the ICE Out for Good protests last weekend, and that brings us to another important word in King's unfinished sermon title that can be all too easy to overlook. That single word, may, is a reminder that this outcome is not destiny, it is not fate, it is not inevitable. It is a call to remember that America's way to hell is not predetermined. It is a path we can still turn away from if we, the people, summon the courage and the will to act. That word may gives us just enough space to breathe. Enough space to remember that the future is not fixed and that what happens next depends in part on what will we choose to do together. In the final year of his life, King published what was to be his last book. Where do we go from here? Chaos or community? A title framed as a question that continues to reverberate with urgency today. Many elected leaders in our own time seem intent on sowing seeds of chaos. But we, the people, still face the same choice that King named, whether we will resign ourselves to division and fear, or whether we will renew our commitment to building a diverse, multicultural, beloved community, one that seeks peace, liberty, and justice, not merely for an elite few, but for all. This chart shows income inequality in the United States from 1910 on the left to 2010 on the right. An essential part of choosing community over chaos is rejecting an economy that hoards abundance at the top while leaving millions struggling to survive paycheck to paycheck, and then calling this arrangement freedom. As you can see in the middle section of this chart, even in the late 1960s, a time of far greater income inequality than today, King was already warning that a democracy that tolerates widespread poverty has lost its moral compass. Allowing poverty in this country is a choice. As you can see on the right side of this chart, since King's death in 1968, the gap between rich and poor in the U.S. has grown dramatically. And his challenge still stands. A nation that can afford enormous riches but will not organize itself to meet basic human needs is not suffering from a lack of resources, but from a failure of moral will. At the end of his life, King's dream centered on organized collective action across the lines of race and class, something we still desperately need today. Again and again, he insisted that we, the people, must come to recognize our shared struggle and our shared power. As he put it plainly, quote, "We are assembled here today with a common purpose." And he was equally clear about where that struggle must be directed. The work, he said, is not against our fellow human beings, maybe a few of them. But in general, our struggle is against unjust systems. In his word, the dispossessed of this nation, the poor, both white and black and every color in between, must organize a revolution, not against the lives of persons, but against the structures that perpetuate poverty and exclusion. As for how we do that, a slogan from the Poor People's Organizing tradition puts it plainly: you only get what you're organized to take. That slogan is also the title of a new book co-authored by the Reverend Dr. Liz Theo-Harris, the national co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign, alongside the Reverend Dr. William Barber. And if you want a sense of what King might be doing if he were alive today, I always point, as do others, to Dr. Barber's leadership as the closest living expression of the same moral vision that King had. So let me say just a bit more about what King dreamed of us organizing around, something as urgent now as it was then. Returning to that critical question in the title of his final book, where do we go from here? Chaos, like we're seeing on the streets of Minneapolis, or community? King writes, "We are approaching areas where the voice of the Constitution is not clear. We have left the realm of constitutional rights, and we are entering the realm of human rights. There is no such assurance," King said, "of the right to adequate housing or the right to adequate income. And yet, in a nation that has a gross domestic product, in King's day, it was $750 billion a year. In 2025, our GNP was $30 trillion. He said, in such a nation, it is morally right to insist that every person have a decent house, an adequate education, and enough money to provide basic necessities for their family. Achievement of these goals," King said, "will be a lot more difficult and require much more discipline, understanding, organization, and sacrifice." King understood that democracy is hollow if it ignores human needs. For King and for us, this was not just a political failure, it was a spiritual failure, a betrayal of the inherent worth and dignity of every human being. And if he were naming human rights today amid skyrocketing health insurance costs, anybody skyrocketing health insurance costs? Our health insurance is going up 19% here at UCF through the UUA's health insurance. So skyrocketing health insurance and medical debt, we should no doubt be adding that access to health care is also not a privilege, but a human right. That vision resonates deeply with the Universalist half of our Unitarian Universalist heritage, that every human being has a right to a basic minimum to live a dignified life. And the question before us is how we get there when more and more people are struggling to make ends meet, while unprecedented wealth is hoarded at the top, and Elon Musk is on track to become the world's first trillionaire with a T. If we had all afternoon, I would love to revisit a sermon I preached some time ago on an extraordinarily important book titled Limitarianism, The Case Against Extreme Wealth. The heart of the argument is this: a just society needs a floor and it needs a ceiling. Everyone doesn't need to be equal, but we need a floor and we need a ceiling. No one should live in poverty, that's the floor, and no one should be allowed to hoard obscene levels of wealth, that's the ceiling. Whether we set an ethical maximum, as this book suggests, that it would actually be fine if no individual is allowed to have not income, but wealth over $10 million. That seems fine to me. I'm willing to add a zero. We can go to 100 million. That seems fine. But the ceiling should be a whole lot before you ever get to any person being a billionaire, much less a trillionaire. And it's really simple what you do. You just take everything from them past $100 million. I mean, it's really simple. And you redistribute it. Extreme wealth in a world of unmet human need is not freedom, it is a failure of collective responsibility. Which brings us to the hard truth about how social change happens. As Frederick Douglass put it plainly, quote, "Power concedes nothing without a demand." To say more about what this insight means for us today, I want to share just a few brief reflections. These are adapted from Rebecca Solnit, a writer and activist known for her work on hope and social movements. She's been posting online short reflective essays that she calls Meditations in an Emergency. I recommend them to you. They're pieces written to help us think clearly, stay grounded, and act wisely in such a time as this. She writes, quote, "I can sum up the Trump, Musk, Vance theory of power in 5 words. We have power, you don't. Except," she says, "we do. And we have used it ferociously, creatively, devotedly, and bravely this year." As Patti Smith sings, people have the power. Not always, not everywhere, but sometimes when we take it. This past year, we the people have taken action in countless ways, standing on freeway overpasses with homemade signs, filling the streets in demonstrations, showing up quietly in immigration courts to bear witness and to protect neighbors from being taken away. Across cities and suburbs and small towns, we have supported one another in ways that are both visible and unseen. You all have supported one another in ways that are visible and unseen, giving time, sharing resources, offering presents, refusing to look away. Some of this resistance makes headlines, most of it never does, but together it has been steady, widespread, and deeply human. Evidence that when we organize ourselves, even in small and imperfect ways, power does not belong only to those at the top. And that matters because even the richest people in the world still run up against something that they cannot purchase, and that is public refusal to cooperate. That refusal, quiet or loud, organized or improvised, is one of the most powerful tools of democracy that we have. Consider Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, wielding immense influence and using that power to cause real harm. Treating civil servants with contempt, undermining public institutions, attacking aid that sustains the world's poorest. By some estimates, hundreds of thousands have already died and millions more are projected to die as a result of cuts to USAID, U.S. humanitarian assistance. And yet something else also happened. Ordinary people used their shared power to push back. Protests, boycotts, and organized resistance like the Tesla takedown movement began to matter. Musk's popularity fell, his companies suffered, his political ambitions stalled. Even massive spending could not buy the outcome that he wanted in the Wisconsin Supreme Court case. That was remarkable. When we, the people, act together, even the most powerful figures discovered there are actually limits that they can't just buy their way past. So let us return to Frederick Douglass. After that famous line, "Power concedes nothing without a demand," comes a passage that's quoted far less often, but it is even more relevant for us today. Douglass continues, "Find out what any people will quietly submit to, and you have found the exact measure of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them. And these will continue till they have resisted with either words or blows or with both." He concludes, "The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress." And the Trump administration appears quite determined to test just how much oppression we, the people, are willing to endure. Douglas's words feel especially poignant in the wake of the crisis unfolding this week in Minneapolis, where escalation, not restraint, has been our president's chosen response. As the president of the Minneapolis City Council described it, federal agents with assault rifles and combat gear are patrolling the streets in convoys. At night, they shine lights from vehicles onto pedestrians. This is a military occupation, and it feels like a military occupation to those of us in Minneapolis. Federal agents scream obscenities at residents and repeatedly holster and unholster their weapons. It is like living in a war zone. The impact is rippling outward. Parents are keeping children home from school, youth sports and other after-school programs are being canceled, and even U.S. citizens describe feeling the need to carry papers to prove their citizenship. Is that what a free country looks like? Moments like this force a question that none of us can avoid forever. What is my red line? What is your red line? What would have to happen for you, for me, to say enough, to move from worry and outrage to action and responsibility? History teaches us that there comes a moment when watching becomes choosing and neutrality becomes a form of consent. Howard Zinn used to say, you cannot stay neutral on a moving train. We are on a moving train. It is not the time for neutrality. Which side are you on? Many of you have already taken action in various ways. If you are unsure, how do I get started? What is the next best thing I should do? These are my top 3 recommendations. Each week, look at those weekly action items that are listed in that insert to your order of service. Really read over them with an open heart. You can also always find them linked in that blue Democracy Action Team box that's right on our homepage, frederickuu.org. Or visit the Democracy Action Team table in the atrium to talk further. Then choose just even one of those actions, one or more, to do each week. Email uucfdemocracyteam@gmail.com if you feel led to join one of our action team, federal issues, voter rights, immigration justice, climate justice, LGBTQ+ rights, and more. Or visit indivisible.org and click on Join the Movement or click on Take Action. Read their websites, read their emails, and choose again one or more of their recommended actions to do each week. None of us can do everything, but together our efforts can make a real difference. And these weekly practices, they don't just matter in the moment, they're helping prepare us, to prepare us spiritually, to prepare us practically for the possibility that conscience may someday require, someday soon, deeper, more collective action. This is the time to start building our democracy muscles, strengthening our capacity to act together so that if more is required of us, we are ready. For those of you who have in the past few years, written letters, made phone calls, visited your representatives, showed up to protests and more, have you felt that? Have you felt kind of your democracy muscles strengthening? Has anybody felt that as they actually kind of did these things? You're like, I actually can do these things. So the question before us is not whether history will just bend toward justice on its own, but whether we will help bend it together. The future is not set. So this MLK weekend, let us remember that King trusted ordinary people like us, organized across differences to interrupt cruelty, to resist injustice, and to build the better world that our children and our grandchildren deserve. Let us be good ancestors to those who are coming after us. The work before us is not easy, but it is ours to do, whether we like it or not. And if we take seriously the inherent worth and dignity of every person, the reality of our shared power, and the moral responsibility of this moment in which we find ourselves, then we can choose community over chaos, courage over fear, and action over despair. I'm grateful to be on that journey, not alone, but with all of you. Let's rise, embody your spirit. Let's sing together hymn 1017, Building a New Way.